for this community, and thank you for this call, Lord. I just pray that you would guide our thoughts and our hearts today, and help us to learn more about what true community means, and about networking. Yeah, just bless Brian as he leads us, and just guide us in your name, Jesus.
Amen.
Amen.
Awesome. Well, I'm really honored that I get to speak with you all around the world. As Don shared, I remember fondly walking into a coffee shop in Denver, Colorado, in the U.S. Because I had brought our teens to lead the cause, and just as is tradition for me, getting off site and grabbing a cup of coffee in the morning, and I walk in and there's Stefano and Donovan and a couple other international people having coffee with Greg Steer. And so Greg, of course, just starts shaking his head because we always run into each other at Starbucks anywhere in any state in the United States. And so he introduced me to these fellas, and we hit it off all week. It was great. And then been able to interact with these guys over the last couple of years. Don, I'll be selfish and say that I don't like COVID. But I'm selfish enough to say that it came at the perfect year because Donovan wanted me to come over with our team for Lead the Cause. And it was just going to be almost impossible for me to be able to be there because my oldest daughter, graduated from high school, and I had a 12-year-old trip with my son that we always do with our 12-year-old kids when they hit 12, a special trip with dad. And things are really busy for me with my job, my regular job. It was going to be really, really tight. And so my wife and I kind of came to the conclusion that it wasn't going to work. And now that it's delayed a year, hey, so there are some blessings in COVID, I guess. So hopefully next summer for us, 2021, could work out for being in town in South Africa. So Donovan, I'm not sure how you want to go about, I guess I'll just do a really, really quick introduction as to just who I am so that people know a little bit about me. I was not raised in a Christian home. We thought we were Christians. I'd go to Christmas and Easter services with my family. But so we were Christians because we live in the United States. But then when I was 17 years old, I got invited to go to a camp through Young Life, which is an organization worldwide, but I don't know how popular it is or how known it is in other places in the world. But I was invited as a teen to go to this camp that really focuses on reaching unchurched kids. And so I got to hear the gospel for the first time. And the story of the prodigal son is what really hit me. And I realized that it was my sin that put Jesus on the cross, and that I had walked away from a loving father and wanted my inheritance now, essentially. And I placed my trust in Jesus. And when I was at this camp in Canada, actually, came back, and the long story short is I fell in love with youth ministry, and I had a youth pastor that poured into me, modeled 1 Thessalonians 2:8 to me. We loved you so much, we were delighted to share with you not only the gospel of God, but our lives as well, because you'd become so dear to us. And so I pursued going into doing youth ministry. So as a 19-year-old, I found a small church and started a youth program. And that trajectory put me on a pathway of being a youth pastor for about 18 years. During that time, fell in love with my wife, and we started making our own kids, and we have three beautiful kids, one 18-year-old daughter, 16-year-old daughter, and a 12-year-old son. Back in 2008, kind of my best practices as a youth pastor, I'd always been a networker, and we'll talk about networking. But one of my best practices was the way that I did short-term missions. Instead of going out of country and into foreign language fields, I really wanted my students to be able to be equipped to share the gospel at a peer-to-peer level, because as a peer, nobody had ever shared the gospel with me during middle school or high school, my formative years. So I wanted to equip my teens to be able to share their hope that they had at their schools or in their clubs. And so my short-term missions as a youth pastor was always across state borders rather than international borders. And our students were trained with how to share at a peer-to-peer level. And because I was a youth networker and meeting with other youth pastors around the area, a lot of them started asking me to train them as well. And so out of that, I started my own organization that concentrated on what we called Mission 51, training for the 51 weeks of life outside of the mission trip. There's 52 weeks in the year, and in the United States, we all, live up to that one mission trip. I just need to get back on my mission trip. I need to get back to camp. And I'm going, I look what Jesus did, and he emphasized his own Jerusalem. So I think our students can be the best missionaries to our students. So I wanted to equip them for that. And that Youth Mark, my organization, took off, just gave me the opportunity to expand my network, not just locally in the West Coast of the United States, but more to all of the United States and eventually even to the world. Been able to train youth leaders in Australia and Costa Rica and Canada and Mexico. So I've been a lot of places being able to train up youth leaders. And so my heartbeat is still networking, still Mission 51, in terms of, I really believe that we need to first and foremost be doing it in our own Jerusalem, instead of just trying to experience an overseas or out of state spiritual high, but being able to do it at a peer-to-peer level is kind of my heartbeat. I love the local church. I'm a leader in my local church, not a paid leader, just a volunteer with students still. I'm an elder at my church, and I preach a couple times a year there. And yeah, that's a little bit about me. I still network with a bunch of youth leaders, and my day job now is you guys have all heard of eHarmony, right? Where you find a husband or a wife. Well, eHarmony, I say that I'm eHarmony for the church and a pastor now. I help churches find the right fit with the right pastors. So maybe I'm speaking U.S. language only when I say eHarmony, but those online dating sites. But I get to do that for pastors and churches. So Don, where do you want me to take it? Do you want me to answer and respond to questions specifically, or do you want me to kind of go through the three subjects that you wanted me to talk about?
Brian, I think it's very chilled, so it's the African style, the way we do things. But if you can touch on those 3 points. But I do think Stefano's got a question that he does want to ask you.
Yeah.
I'm also sorry. I'm just trying to sort out technical things on this side because there are guys trying to jump on, but it seems like they're stuck in a
waiting room.
Go for it.
Yeah, I just thinking maybe, Brian, that we diving a little bit more in the idea of networking, because sometimes I believe for movement, it's critical that we enlarge always our networking, and we want to connect with people. And we used to say here in Italy that we are network of networks. So because we want to connect more, and I always see that the network helped me to see the opportunity in front of us when we put people together, of advancing the kingdom in our region. So I don't know if the 3 points that you are going through, if you can answer, the question like which kind of principle and values you see in networking, and also some of best practice that maybe we guys can apply, in our daily life, and also I want to say that if you can underline, the importance of be network with other people.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll invite you into even when networking kind of started for me. I had just completed my education, university, and I got my first actual job as a youth pastor coming out of school. And it was in a state called Oregon in the United States. And I didn't know anybody there, but I came to my church my first day on the job, and a postcard had arrived in the mail. And another youth pastor in the area had heard that Melrose Community Church, where I was pastoring, had gotten a new youth pastor, and it's just this handwritten note from Kirk that said, come to Mom's Cafe next Thursday for a youth pastor breakfast. And so I was invited to this youth pastor breakfast, and I showed up at the restaurant, not knowing anybody still, and walked in, and I heard great laughter coming from this side room. And I said, oh, that must be where the youth pastors are. And so I walked into this breakfast hall, and here's this group of men and women laughing, about 10 of them. And they were all the youth pastors from that local community that were gathering on a monthly basis. So I was invited into this network, and we had more than Jesus in common. We had that in common, but we also all love teenagers. And so with those two things in mind, we started, I joined this local network that monthly was meeting together and talking about the things that bonded us. Jesus bonded us, and our love for teenagers bonded us. And so the whole premise is, why not talk about these two things together and helping teens enter into a relationship with Jesus? So that became just kind of my mantra wherever I was, wherever God has taken me, is understanding that I want to help connect people in those two passions, that I'm passionate about Jesus and I'm passionate about teenagers coming to know Jesus and growing in their relationship with Jesus. And I don't have all the answers. So why not put myself in a context? Now, through 25 years of doing youth ministry, I've learned a lot more about Jesus, about teenagers, and I've become the old wise one, I guess. Lack of hair makes people think I have wisdom, I guess. And so I've now become a kind of master networker and helping other people, basically connect. And I think there's a few principles, Stefano, to answer your question. I think just the sense of refuge and solace and solitude and being able to be replenished and renewed is one of the key values in networking. And just even looking around this virtual room, we have those same things in common. We love Jesus and we love teenagers, and sometimes that's a tough battle. And sometimes we feel alone in that, and we just need to be renewed. And so coming to even a call like this, knowing that there's other people that are going through the same thing, we just need that renewal. We need that building up, and we need to know that other people are going through the same battle that we are. And so I gathered for breakfast with these guys and gals, and was nourished with the food, nourished with the laughter, but also just felt like I had battle buddies. We're going through something together, and we desperately want these teens to know Jesus. And so that refuge part was a big thing. And then also, I think the whole idea of 1 Corinthians chapter 12 and verses, the whole chapter really is about the body of Christ, and every part of the body is needed. The hand can't say to the foot, I don't need you. The ear can't say to the hand, I don't need you. We need each other, and we're all gifted in specific areas. And so for me, there was aspects of being a youth pastor or being an evangelist or being a pastor that I'm not great at, that somebody else in my community can help me become better at. And so it's not just about refuge, it's about being built up, it's about being supported, and it's about learning from each other. So that's kind of for me, the biggest value in having a regular place of being built up, being poured into, but also being able to pour out as well. So that's kind of there's deeper dives into each of those areas for sure, and I'm happy to go there. But that's the kind of the broad stroke answer, Stefano.
So guys, do you have any question, or Don, you have any question now?
Yeah, I just want to welcome Paulgrave. He's from Ghana. Most of the guys know Paulgrave. Welcome, Paulgrave. I can see you driving. Put your mask on, bro. Paulgrave's uncle is the president of Ghana, for those guys who don't know. And Paulgrave, quickly.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah, do it.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a joy to be here. I'm just very grateful to Donovan for keeping me aligned very strongly to the continual work of making disciples who make disciples. And so I worked with Donovan with Jesus Life, and also I'm part of Go Live There. But I have personal roles at the moment. I work with the government of Ghana. I lead a think tank that focuses on leadership, that focuses on the economy, and focuses on governance and a number of policy conversations. So I advise the president and cabinet and some ministers, and I interface between the populace and government and the ruled and the ruling. But I try to still be a disciple maker, and I'm happy that Donovan is mentoring me. He keeps mentoring me. So yeah, Don, it's good to be here. I'm driving at the moment, but I'll be following the conversation I'm going into, we just launched a database, an online database for infrastructure, integrated infrastructure development from 1900 to date. All the infrastructural work that has been done in the country, we put it in a database format, so we'll be able to track where our development is going towards.
Hey, bro,
And,
you're talking boring stuff. Shush. Let's let Brian chat now.
Okay.
Yo, bro. Thanks, Paulgrave. Zoe and James know Paulgrave as well. They're also on the call, Paulgrave. There was someone from Zambia, but he's jumped off again. But yeah, Brian, just one of the questions that I have, maybe for guys who battle with networking, what are some of the things what are some tools that maybe you've seen that help guys that battle with networking? Maybe it boils down to the individual, I'm not sure. Or for some pastors, it happens naturally. For some guys, it's like a natural. I know Paulgrave, Zoe, James, the guys, part of their jobs are to network. But what are some things that might help guys that really struggle with networking?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that everybody's context is different, and it's way different now than it was 20 years ago. It's completely possible. We're networking right now, and you know we're networking around the globe right now, and everybody or almost everybody has the internet, and everybody has one of these, and so we're so connected. It's really a choice to remain connected. And so I think it's self-awareness. If you're not a person who naturally is thinking outside of yourself, you may need that accountability. So let's just say that Don is not one who, he's trying to build an organization that makes disciples who makes disciples. But in order to have success, he needs to get that message out. And so he may ask me to help him with the networking side of things and say, hey, Brew, you know a lot of people. Can you help me get into a context of knowing more people? And so on a monthly basis, maybe Don just says, I would love to network in the United States because I need prayer, I need support. And so on a monthly basis, I might be just helping him by getting a group of new people, Baptists or Episcopals or whatever. Maybe we do once per month where I'm just introducing him to new people. But then there's also ongoing networking where it's more that sense of refuge. And so for me, the context is first of all local, and then national, and then international. Kind of the same thing with Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the uttermost, is that I maintain a local network. And so I know that the youth pastors in my immediate area where I live outside of Seattle, I know that they need somebody to organize a local context of being able to be together. And Donovan's been there. Once a month, we meet at a place called Mod Pizza. It's one of those really red brick pizza oven places, short, quick fix of a pizza. And we meet there once a month. And every month I send out an email or a Facebook message to the local youth pastors and just say, hey, the third Thursday of the month, I'm going to be there at 11:30. And this month's question is, how are you taking care of your own relationship with Jesus? And so they know that they're coming, and everybody's going to be able to answer that question for themselves and glean from one another. The next month, maybe the question is, what's the best game that you're doing in youth ministry right now? And so everybody gets to share the best game that they're doing in youth ministry. The next month, maybe the question that I pose is, how are you developing leaders that are pouring into students? How are other adult volunteers being trained in your local context? Well, I can go to that meeting and Miranda might answer, and she might say, hey, one of the things that we do to train our leaders is that I go out once a month for coffee, or once a week for coffee with one of my adult leaders. I've got 9 different leaders. So once every 9 weeks, I'm with Samantha, or once every 9 weeks, I'm with Stephen, and we're grabbing coffee, and I'm just training them one-on-one. Well, that might be something that I've never thought of. And so I just learned from Miranda that relational context, one-on-one, is the best way to train leaders from Miranda's context. And I might hear from Jake a great game that I can start my youth group with the next week that just breaks down barriers. So I do a local network. Then I'm doing more national networking, where right now You think about all of our contexts. There's churches that have been closed for the last 4 months in terms of gatherings for youth group, and so everything's been done via Zoom. Well, now some states are opening up, and so there's churches that have opened in some of the states in the United States where ours hasn't. Well, we need to learn what have they gone through. Have people been showing up? What was the best practices for social distancing? How are you doing youth group? Well, I could put together calls with national leaders because I'm networked and get on Zoom together, and we can learn from each other. I could do exactly what Donovan's doing right now. I can record that call, and with my job with Slingshot, I can then broadcast this, and we can have 12 leaders around a table, and anybody can then watch that later and go, oh man, we can be doing some of those things as we open up in Arizona or in California. And so that's the national network side of things. And then internationally, there's so many things that you're doing in Africa and South Africa that we're not doing. And so why wouldn't we want to learn that, and vice versa? Stuff that we're doing in the US or stuff that we're doing in Italy that is working or not working, that we should learn from each other. So we've made so many horrible mistakes in youth ministry. We don't want you to make the same mistake. So let me tell you what not to do. Or we made some great successes. Here's some things that are working. And why wouldn't you want to try that then as well? So that's kind of, ways to do it. And here's, again, going back to the self-awareness. Some of us are introverted, meaning we don't know how to be not shy. And some of us are extroverted, and we just put ourselves out there. I would say this: attach yourself to an extrovert. Make sure that you have an extrovert in your life that is going to help the context of networking. I'm more extroverted, so I have no problem setting up networks and inviting people to that. Whereas somebody who's more introverted would rather be invited and start making that habit. But once they're in relationship, they might be more administrative, and they're the ones who should maintain it. I could get it started, but somebody else using their spiritual gift can be the person who administrates it and keeps it going. And somebody would be better to keep that email out each month to invite people in, because I'm organized, but I'm busy, and I'd rather have somebody else take that off of my plate. So does that help, Don?
Brian, thanks, man. It's I think some of that stuff that you said about accountability is huge, and it's key, as well as attaching. That's some great advice. Attaching, especially if you're an introverted person, attaching yourself to somebody that's extroverted. As we know, disc analysis, somebody that's like a ha like yourself, just who's well connected, well networked, and to connect with them. But one of the things, Brian, is when pastors, leaders, when they struggle to have a network, I just want to ask us across the board to the different contexts, especially in South Africa. Do you see guys struggling to be in unity with each other because of some guys want a network, but other guys don't want a network, and they don't want to be in unity? In our case, Brian, because of, I'd say, denominational lines, there's that. Because, for example, I'm Go Live There in South Africa, and the first thing guys would ask me is, who are you affiliated to? What branch are you a part of? For the guys from J-Life, they would ask the same thing. And I just want to ask that question across the board. Do you guys struggle with the same thing in your context? So, Paul in Ghana, Zoe, Liberia, maybe Stefano, Italy, and just Brett, if you want to jump in, Japes as well. I hope you understand what I'm saying.
Hey, Don, can you repeat that? My end just blanked out a little bit, that your sentence stopped halfway.
Okay, first world problems. Japes, when we speak networking, I think there's like two sides of it. Like, some guys do want to network, but there's also other guys who don't want to network because of denominational lines. And I'm asking this broadly because we're a diverse group here. Do you struggle with it in Liberia? Do you struggle with it in Johannesburg? Do you struggle with it in Italy, in Ghana? I'm interested. I think Brian would be interested as well. But also just to offer, and Uganda, just to offer some insights for us. Because, I mean, this is and Brian, what you actually said is kind of like a round table learning from each other. So I really appreciate that, Brian. Like a lot of times we've got an American guy on who's well experienced like yourself, but yeah, learning from each other is key. So I hope you got that, Japes.
Yeah. I'll just add my bit. I think I've already vented to Don a few times about this in terms of lead the cause and trying to motivate youth pastors, because it's not my thing. It's actually the Great Commission, and we're equipping our teenagers, which of course, as a youth pastor, you should kind of get behind. But what I'm finding is a lot of resistance, and sometimes it's not even physical or verbal. It's actually just in terms of attitudes, in terms of yeah I'll be there, but then they never pitch. And so we do things, we offer breakfasts, we offer coffee meetups, but everyone's kind of concerned on what I'm calling church islands. Everyone's just focused on their congregation or their youth ministry or their denomination. I'm not a very denomination focused person, but being in a denomination, the moment that I invite someone to our church, they see a Gateway Presbyterian Church, they're like, okay, well, that's a Presbyterian thing. And then I've got a lot of Baptist friends because I went to Baptist college, and they don't really want to come to my event, but they're so keen on me coming to their event. And so we're having this sort of everyone's doing their own thing kind of culture, but nobody's willing to come to this thing, which I feel is more important, to train teenagers to go out with the gospel. You can run programs, you can do anything that you want with your youth programs, but it's never going to focus on the Great Commission. And a lot of youth pastors fall into that trap of running great programs, getting as many people to their events, and I mean, it's fairly easy, if I'm honest. You can light a few poodles on fire. What does Greg Steer says that? Light a few poodles on fire and bring up pizza, and you'll get the numbers. But the Great Commission is what's important. But we're finding a lot of churches resist, and a lot of leaders, and I mean, these are my peers. These are guys that I can have a cup of coffee with, and we can talk about God, and we can have good godly conversation. But the moment that you say, hey, come, let's get together, let's worship together, let's equip our teenagers together for the gospel's sake. They're so keen on you going to their camp or their event or their conference, but the moment that you say, hey, come to this conference, like Lead the Cause, for example, which is not mine at the end of the day, they still like, oh, well, it's not our thing. And I struggle with that. I think that frustrates me when my heart is like, I want to network, I want to connect, I want to get back to the roots. That resistance is what bugs me as a leader, as a youth pastor. So that's my end.
So I'm in the same context as JP, so maybe I'll go as well. I find exactly the same thing, JP, in my context, and there's two issues that come up time and time again for me in terms of negative issues in terms of networking. The one is, and it tends to, let me tell you the issue. The one issue is when youth pastors network, sometimes it's almost like a competition. How many guys do you have in your youth? What guest speaker did you bring in? If you got 15, 20 people coming to your youth, and the guy who's leading has got 200, and he's bringing in like some sort of artist from America to his youth, you just feel like, well, who am I in this? And it tends to become a culture of that sort of group where people do. I mean, great guys, but it kind of slips in where everybody's trying to outdo each other, and that kind of negates the will to kind of want to meet together when it just becomes that kind of thing. The other thing that I found, similar to what JP was saying, is I find there's a lot of youth pastors are under quite a lot of pressure from their senior pastors, just in terms of how do I call it, warranting having a youth pastor. So sure, we're putting in all this expense for a youth pastor for our church, so better just pile them with work, because otherwise it's a waste of time. I could do it myself, as a side thing. So people are under pressure, like youth pastors are under pressure, and sometimes they're also under pressure in terms of a denominational sense. So if the youth pastor is all keen for together events, but the senior pastor is saying, well, that's not really what we do, or this is their view on X, Y, or Z, so I'd rather you didn't kind of mix with those guys. I just found that those are two quite major networking killers.
Okay, so from Liberia, I think it's what I've noticed is 3 kinds of negative things when it comes to networking. And the first is guys want to know what's in it for me, as in what's there for me, whether it's personally or it's for their local church. What's there for me? It's something that we battle with here. They want to know, okay, you are inviting me to this, whatever that is, to this meeting or to this network of youth leaders. So what personally am I going to get? So they are not really they're looking at what they will get in terms of material things. I attend, are you going to give me something for attending? A lot of times, and that's strange for me because being outside of Liberia, it isn't something that I have encountered, but it's something that is still here. Like, you are inviting me. When I attend, are you going to pay me? Are you going to do something? Are you going to give something that is material? That's one thing. And the other is the denominational thing. Like, people, if it's not coming from my church, obviously it's not a good doctrine. It's not something that I'm interested in. In fact, it has to be from me for it to be good. So that's another thing that we struggle with. If it's not from my church, or if it's not coming from Zoe, then it's not something that is good. It's not something that is worth it. It's not something that's going to lift the name of God high, for instance. And another thing is that people believe that
Yes, she froze there for a second. So I'll quickly speak to kind of a few of those things.
They know it all. Okay.
Zoe, sorry.
They are the best when it comes to what trying to bring. Yes, I'm here.
You broke off
Hello?
for a second. You disappeared, and then you reappeared. It was like the rapture.
Oh.
They wanted you, but they didn't want you.
Oh.
Sorry. So yeah, Zoe, just finish what you're saying, and then Brian will respond just to what you guys have been saying.
Okay, yeah. So what I'm saying is that a lot of the guys here, if it's not something from their church or their youth group, then it's not something that is okay. It's not something that is biblical. It's not something that they want to do because simply it did not come from their minds or their church or their leaders or something like that. And that's something we struggle with here a lot.
Yeah. So this is definitely nothing new under the sun, and it may be different in each of our contexts, but there's definitely that spirit of competition and spirit of denomination that can easily divide here in the United States as well. One thing I saw at a conference one time that was interdenominational, a speaker got up and had everybody yell out their name. And so everybody's yelling out, Stefano, Brian, Brett, Miles, all at the same time. And you can't understand anything. And then he said, on a count of 3, I want you to all name your personal Lord and Savior. And so 1, 2, 3, and everybody said, Jesus. And you can hear it so loud and clear. It was everybody naming the name of Jesus. I think that is whoever a network leader is, and you guys are leaders of networks. That's what you have to keep first and foremost when you do a meeting, is that there can be no agenda except for Jesus and teens. And we have to name that. And that's why I build my networks around the whole idea of being a refuge to each other, being Psalm 46:10, being still and knowing that he is God. and uniting uniting our spirit in that we are here first and foremost for Jesus, not for an agenda of any one event. A person like Donovan, if he lived in the Seattle area and I invited him into a network, I would tell Don, do not share if he's an actual, you know, businessman or ministry man that is trying to get people to his conferences. I would say you need to come to my network and not talk about lead the cause. You need to come and you need to talk about Jesus, and you need to be there for these people. And once people know that you care, they care what you're about. And so I never talked about YouthMark, my Mission 51. I was there to be a networker and to be there for these people. Now, most of those churches ended up using my mission trips because there was context of relationship. And so I coach people around the world, Don, and have the opportunity to speak to Stefano and say, be there for the people, be there because of Jesus, and be there because these people are in ministry, and you make it focused on that and not about an event you're trying to get people to, but because of relationship, the competition factor will go down. And so when somebody starts talking about denomination or starts talking about their event, literally as the leader of that meeting, because I am high D and high I on disc, I'll just take charge and I'll just say, hey, that's not our purpose for being here. Our purpose is we want to learn from one another what is working best. And if there's opportunities to partner outside of this, great. But our purpose is to be a refuge to each other, to point people towards Jesus, and not have the things that divide. And I'll just end with this. This is not a new problem. This is even before Christianity existed. This existed among the Jews. You have the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the Essenes, and they were in competition with each other for the best way of doing Judaism. And so then when Christ came, or when Paul came on the mission, that's why they were so mad, is because they saw them as denominations. And they're taking away from our popularity, and that same thing, we have to say, what is it that unites us, and what is it that brings us together? And that's Jesus is what brings us together. So if we keep that focus on Jesus, it's not about getting bottoms and seats at events anymore. It's about getting people into the kingdom first and foremost.
Yeah, I love what you said, Brian, and also I'm thinking like it's about our focus. So if our focus is Jesus, then we behave in a certain way. So and also for me here, it's like if I start to think about, which is, if I switch my focus from Jesus, then all my behavior, my thinking, and my relationship will change. If my focus is on Jesus, I will point everyone to Jesus. All my conversation, my relationship with and also my behavior will change, if my focus is Jesus. So I love what you said, and also it's about, loving others, loving people, and then also another great things I see in our conversation, like networking, when we put people together, and then it's God is already working among us, and he will set whatever he has a plan for us together in the future. But if we just keep focusing on people and loving them, and then we'll see how God lead this kind of networking.
Yeah, Brian, I loved what you said, because I'm the type of guy that will come to your meeting and say, Brian, can I speak about lead the cause, man? I really just want to get this on the guys. But I think what you said is really important about, starting to love the guys first and really being authentic with those guys. And I think that's kind of, a reminder for me as a ministry and movement leader here, just to take a step back in a sense, and instead of seeing the big picture, as I always see the big picture, but also looking at the individuals, and really just being authentic and loving guys. And I'll tell you now, Brian, I'm not a good pastor.
Well, I think everybody's conscientious of the person who's trying to sell you something, because we live in a marketing world. We all have our sniffer up of going, hey, why is this person at my door right now? What are they trying to sell me? And if I'm a networker and what I'm trying to do is I name my purpose, I want to get us together so that we can talk about how we can reopen our churches. And if that's what brought us together today, like, hey, COVID is hit, now we're coming out of it, and so we want to reopen up our churches. But let's just say a guy named Bobby is on this call, and Bobby starts talking about, hey, the best way to reopen your churches is by actually having this breath mint, and you all should open your churches and you should use this breath mint so that everybody has better breath when they come into the church. We all go, he's here to sell us something. This is no longer talking about reopening our churches and our best practices of doing youth group again. This is somebody that's trying to sell us something. He's trying to sell us a breath mint. I don't want to be part of this call anymore. That's what happens in our networks, is if it really, the purpose is refuge and focusing on Jesus and helping people to understand that teenagers need help in their relationship with Jesus, in Christ. But then somebody's trying to sell you a camp or trying to sell you a retreat or trying to sell you a curriculum as their number one agenda. We all see that. And so if we can keep our purpose on networking and building relationships, I will tell you, you're going to have people come to your Lead the Cause event. You're going to have people buy your product, your curriculum that you might have, but not if you're trying to sell it in that context. You have to be bought in on the relationship. And then outside of those pizza houses and coffee houses, people are going to go, tell me more about Lead the Cause. I want to align myself with you, Don. Now it's different when you're an invited guest. I brought Don into our context. He's only there for that one week, and he comes to Mod Pizza. We're all talking and laughing, and I say, hey, Don's here from South Africa. You guys got to hear what he's about. And I'm inviting him to share. Everybody's okay to hear that commercial. But if Don's just coming for the purpose of doing that and doesn't care about the relationships, nobody cares about Don.
Is Paul Grave still on the call?
Apparently not.
I thought he was still there. Paul Grave. Isn't it Galaxy A71? Okay, never mind. Yeah, Brian, thank you, man. I think that.
Can I ask a question?
Oh yes, James, go for it. James, go for it.
Yeah, my relation. Sometimes there are issues we may need to confront, and maybe weaknesses in the network or weaknesses in individual lives of leaders. So how do you bring that up so that we don't lose the focus or break relationships? And yet we see them as felt needs, especially in local and national networks. So how do we balance that up? Okay, thank you.
James, sorry.
Did you get the question?
Yeah, just repeat the question. Partly you came in a little bit late, and the wind is blowing. So just repeat it.
Yeah, what I was saying is, sometimes in networks, okay, you want to build relationships, you want to keep your focus on Jesus, but also sometimes there are some real felt needs you want to address among each other as leaders. But the question would be, how do you address that without losing each other in the network? Because sometimes you bring up issues that you feel like are key, you want them to change, you want the leaders to make some changes here and there, but you end up stepping on toes. You end up annoying someone, some get offended. So how has Brian managed to handle situations like those? Yeah.
I think I understand the question. There's so many things that do divide us. And so I think there's times when as a network leader, if I'm leading the meeting, I'm going to make sure that I keep calling us back to our purpose. And so a real common one is denominational differences in the United States. And so you've got Baptists and Presbyterians, Assemblies of God, Pentecostal. And so just in the sign gifts side of things, we'll be at the pizza place, and I've got somebody who's Presbyterian who they're known as the frozen chosen. And they don't believe in the sign gifts being, you know, still valid today of speaking in tongues or healings and stuff. And then you've got a Pentecostal that they're, you know, they're in church service, and it can look crazy to people that are more from the Baptist roots or Presbyterian roots. And so all this name that, hey, there's theological differences and there's ways that we're going about our churches differently, but let's remember what unites us. We love Jesus, and we love teenagers, and it's going to play out in our context different. But here at the pizza place, let's talk about the things that we do have in common. We're all trying to minister to teens on our school campuses or in our clubs. What are the best games that are helping us with that? Or what's the best way that you're helping a student grow in his or her relationship with Jesus? What are some Bible verses or some talks that you've given lately that have been really effective? And so when they get into the areas that divide, I just have to be the person who facilitates that and just says, hey, we're not going to talk about that. If you guys want to have a private debate afterwards, great. But I think that we're going to waste some time if we're talking about the things that divide us, where we have an hour and a half together. Let's talk about the things that unite us. And again, being that sense of refuge. And it takes leadership. On my part, and people do know me in my area as somebody who just kind of forges through the awkward, and they respect me as a leader, whereas somebody who's newer to the network, they haven't built that reputation yet. And so in establishing who you want to be as a network, if you're the one who started it, you're the one who has to put the parameters on it as well. If you're one who's been invited in, take the time to get to know the group before you start pushing any of your own agenda as well.
James, I hope that helps answer your question. Okay, I think it did because he didn't respond. Forge through the awkward, Brian. You said it. We're gonna forge through the awkward, even on Zoom calls when everybody's quiet. But yeah, Brian, we're gonna thank you for your time, and I think there's been some good nuggets of wisdom. Every time I speak to you, I end up
yes,
harder
boss, I've got it. Yeah, thank you. Yes.
Brian, it's that African time, bro. It comes through later. Thanks, James, man. I appreciate that. Guys, I'll give it another 5 minutes. I know Brian's busy. If you've got another question, now's the time to ask it. Something, if it's burning on your heart. Brian truly is a networker extraordinaire, but also, like, I encourage, like, hundreds of dudes to be on the call to, like, I know, Brian, like I was saying, when I walk away, when I spend 5 minutes with you, I'm like, I'm thinking about it, and I also am convicted on some things as well at times. So it's really cool to have a guy like you that keeps guys on their toes as well. And maybe briefly speaking to that, Brian, just having guys in your network that don't always agree with you, if you can, and why it's beneficial to have guys like that. I mean, it can be personalities that clash, but you know, it's also helpful to have guys that don't always go with the flow.
Yeah, well, I think of Jesus and the 12. I mean, the 12 people that Jesus chose to be around, man, if you think about their context, they probably didn't like each other. When their first team meeting, you know, you got some fishermen, you got a tax collector, you got some guy that's totally zealous about everything and like, whoa, this guy's over the top, man. And yet those 12 is where the church started. And we have to sharpen one another. There's the people that are remaining on this call, I guarantee that we all have different theological contexts. We have things that we can learn from each other. And I mean, I'll use this. When Donovan was in Seattle, you know, I'm so used to Seattle, but we went to downtown and we're walking Pike Place Market, which is where the original Starbucks is. And so it's a tourist trap. But Don was walking down the street and he's got a spiritual intuition and discernment that he said, man, there's a lot of spiritual warfare here, Brian. And there's some places I don't even want to walk into because I'm feeling like there's demons or that spiritual side. I'm not one who has that more Pentecostal bent. And I don't even think Donovan's like totally Pentecostal or anything, but he was discerning that. I'm learning from that. We're so much better together. And that doesn't mean that, oh man, Don has now made me a Pentecostal, or I've made him more Baptist or anything. It's that I'm learning from him, but we're going to have areas that we disagree on for sure. And the way that God has wired my brain in terms of thinking through strategically, I'm a strategic thinker. And so as Don started Go Live Dare, there's things that he's asked me, and I've said, hey, maybe you need to structure this, or this, just because that's my mindset. And then he's talking to me about, hey, have you thought about this, or this as you do Slingshot? And we learn from one another. Even though we don't get to walk in each other's shoes, we get to influence each other. And I think that's what networking really is that we're influencers of each other. And if we come in with this attitude of open-handedness, rather than saying, hey, this is mine, I'm going, hey, maybe this is something that you can have as well, and you can learn from it. And so for me, it's like, again, concentrating on the things that unite rather than the stuff that divides.
Brian, that's I'm glad I'm recording this. Really good stuff. Anyone else want to add? All right, Brian, thank you for your time, man. We need to catch up again.
I agree. I can't wait to come to South Africa. Now everybody needs to come, because then now you have context of another brother that you guys know. So you all need to come together, and whether it be lead the cause or for a network of grabbing coffee together.
And Brian, how can the guys get hold of you if they got questions and just need some guidance, and if you're open to that?
Yeah, I just put my email in the easiest way is just through email there, or I'm on Facebook. Here's my, if you just go on Facebook and make sure you put that name in, or at for Twitter and Instagram, at Brian Aaby. My last name's spelled A-A-B-Y, but I'm on social networking, and then that email address too that's in the chat.
Thanks, Brian. Paul Grave, I'm going to ask you to pray for us, end us in prayer. And you're back again. You disappeared, but I'm glad you're back, my Ghanaian friend. Thanks, bro. Paul Grave. Right, I just love it when this happens.
Okay. Can we pray?
All right, there we go. Let's do it.
Thank you for our time this afternoon as a team from different parts of the world and different continents. Thank you for that, Lord. I'm praying. I'm praying. No, sure. Let's pray. Thank you for Father Brian. Thank you, Lord Jesus, even for an opportunity to experience COVID and how we are supposed to adjust our lives to meet up to the challenges that have arisen. We pray, Lord Jesus, that our disciple-making agenda, Lord Jesus, will be deepened within these times. That will be a test of our time as we do not have an opportunity to engage and gather together as a church. We pray, Lord Jesus, that you would help these conversations that we have held, that Father will take it into implementation in our various lives and in our various local churches. And we ask that, Father, as you be lifted up, you draw men unto you. We ask that, Father, you continually be lifted up in our lives, in our ministries, our families, and in everything that we find ourselves doing to bring glory and honor unto you. In Jesus' name we have prayed. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining the
We
call.
are blessed.
Thanks, James.
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye. Bye to all.
Yes.
Thanks, Paul Grave. There's like a delay.
Thank you, Donovan.
So weird. A 5-minute delay for sure. All right, thanks for joining the call, Brian. I'm going to send you a voice note now. I think it's on Messenger. Yeah, thanks again, man, Brian. Thanks, Brett. Thanks, Japes, for joining. And Zoe from Liberia. Yeah, we love having you guys part of the call, and I've got a lot out of this, man. So I appreciate you. As you can see, it's getting dark.
See you guys.
Dinner time for me. It's getting dark.
Go eat. See you guys.
Bye. Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.